The year is 2025. But our story begins long ago, in a land shrouded in perpetual mist. Fog clings to castle stones, creeps across muddy fields, hiding danger everywhere. In every corridor, behind every tapestry, a plot could be brewing. The Plantagenets ruled here, a family both blessed and cursed by the crown. The throne was the ultimate prize, a symbol of divine right. The great houses watched each other with wary eyes, lions circling a kill. Loyalty was currency, not virtue. This is a story written in blood and tears, a family tearing itself apart and a kingdom with it. The conflict had a name, the War of the Roses, a poetic name for a brutal family feud. On one side, the House of Lancaster, symbolised by the red rose, held the throne but was haunted by a weak, gentle king, Henry VI. Henry's mind often wandered, leaving a vacuum of power others rushed to fill. Opposing them, the House of York, bearing the white rose, claimed a stronger, older right to rule. Their leader, Richard, Duke of York, was everything Henry was not: ambitious, charismatic, a proven soldier. Richard saw chaos in the kingdom and seized his chance, not to take the crown at first, but to control it. But power is addictive. Soon control was not enough. The struggle was about more than a crown. It was about real power to make laws, raise armies, grant or strip titles and control England's wealth. Nobles were forced to choose, red rose or white. To choose wrongly was to risk everything. Allegiances were sworn and broken overnight. This was civil war, brother against brother, father against son. The old certainties vanished. The kingdom's bonds frayed and snapped. Even a farmer could be forced to fight for a lord he'd never met, his fate decided by distant battles. The red and white roses became symbols of bitter division, badges of loyalty and defiance. Under these banners, England's fields would be soaked in blood. The war had begun. In this age of shifting power, one man stood above the rest. Not a king, but a maker of kings, Richard Neville, Earl of Warwick. Known as the Kingmaker, Warwick was the wealthiest man in England after the king, commanding vast armies and immense influence. He was the ultimate power broker. His support could make or break a monarch. Warwick was the chief ally of young Edward, Earl of March, son of the Duke of York. Together, they drove the Lancastrians from the field and captured King Henry. With Warwick's backing, Edward became King Edward IV, the White Rose triumphant. But power breeds rivalry. Edward, young and headstrong, refused to be Warwick's puppet. The first rift came when Edward secretly married Elizabeth Woodville, a commoner, undermining Warwick's plans for a royal alliance. Humiliated, Warwick saw his influence wane as Edward favoured the Woodvilles. The Kingmaker's loyalty faltered. If he could make a king, he could break one. Warwick began plotting anew. The game was far from over, only more treacherous. While men fought with swords, a queen fought with iron will, Margaret of Anjou, the French bride of Henry VI. Where Henry was passive, Margaret was fierce, determined to protect her son's birthright. When Henry's mind failed, Margaret led the Lancastrian cause, rallying armies and forging alliances with France and Scotland. She was called the She-Wolf of France, an insult she wore as a badge of honour. Margaret was the heart of her cause, willing to sacrifice anything for her son, Edward of Westminster. After the Battle of Wakefield, where the Duke of York was killed, Margaret's army was victorious. She ordered York's head displayed on the city gates, crowned with a paper crown, a brutal act that turned a political struggle into a blood feud. Margaret's determination was relentless, but her victories were fleeting. Forced into exile, she wandered Europe, never giving up hope. Eventually she allied with her old enemy Warwick and briefly restored Henry VI to the throne. But her triumph was short-lived. the wheel of fortune would turn again with devastating consequences. Edward, Earl of March, later King Edward IV, was a new kind of king, tall, charismatic, and a brilliant commander. His banner, the sun in splendour, seemed to promise victory. After his father's death, Edward struck back with fury, winning the bloody Battle of Towton. The White Rose was washed in Lancastrian blood. Edward's reign brought peace and prosperity. He was popular, understood trade, and was adored by London. But his secret marriage to Elizabeth Woodville alienated Warwick and created a new faction at court. The Woodvilles' rise bred resentment among the old nobility. Edward's trust was sometimes misplaced, and his court became divided. Warwick, spurned, allied with Margaret of Anjou, forcing Edward into exile. But Edward returned, defeated his enemies at Barnet and Tewkesbury, and reclaimed his throne. Warwick was killed, Margaret's son slain, and Edward reigned supreme, at least for a time. The fall of York came from within. After Edward IV's sudden death, his brother Richard, Duke of Gloucester, became Lord Protector for young Edward V. Ambition took root in Richard's heart. He moved swiftly, arresting and executing the Woodvilles, isolating the princes in the Tower. Richard declared Edward IV's marriage invalid, making the princes illegitimate, and claimed the throne as Richard III. His reign was plagued by mistrust and rebellion, haunted by the fate of the princes. The final act played out at Bosworth Field, where Richard faced Henry Tudor. In a desperate charge, Richard was killed. His last words, a horse, my kingdom for a horse!" The crown was found in a thorn bush and placed on Henry Tudor's head. No tale from this era haunts the imagination like that of the two princes, Edward V and his brother Richard. After their father's death, they were placed in the Tower of London, supposedly for their protection. Soon, the Tower became their prison. The boys were last seen playing in the gardens. Then they vanished. Tudor historians blamed Richard III, claiming he ordered their murder to secure his throne. The truth remains a mystery. No trial, no bodies, only rumours. Some argue Richard had no need to kill them. Others suspect rival nobles or even Henry Tudor. The story became powerful Tudor propaganda, symbolising the brutal reality of the age in the quest for the crown. Nothing was sacred, not even children. Richard III's death at Bosworth ended an era. The Plantagenets were finished, and England was exhausted. The people craved peace, and Henry Tudor offered a new beginning. As King Henry VII, he knew his claim was weak, so he married Elizabeth of York, uniting the red and white roses. The Tudor rose became a symbol of unity and peace. Henry was a new kind of king, cautious, shrewd, and determined to restore order. He weakened the old nobility, strengthened the monarchy, and refilled the kingdom's coffers. The Wars of the Roses faded into legend, a warning of the chaos that follows when succession is uncertain. The mists of the medieval world began to clear. A new age was dawning, defined by the formidable power of the Tudor throne. The long, dark night was over.